Good morning to our beautiful JNForever family on Zoom. This is our final Zoom for the year 2021. And please God, well, I wouldn't say forever because there's always a time when Zoom will come into play when we get overseas speakers or whatever, but I hope it's not for a lockdown purpose. 2021, it's been the year of lockdowns, releases, curfews, freedoms, restrictions, openings. If you think back on words, masks, sanitizer, soap, water, vaccinations, Zoom, a bit of doom, a bit of gloom, but always positivity. There's always light at the end of the 5-kilometer tunnel. And our events, which we hope to think that we've all sort of kept connected and supported and inspired, and that's what we've aimed to do, and I hope that we've achieved that. The usual in-house rules, you all will be on mute. You can unmute yourselves at the end to ask questions. Mike's very happy for anybody to ask questions at the end. We'll open it up. By now, you all definitely know who I am. I'm Jackie Chait, the Legacy Manager for JNF Victoria. Leaving a bequest is a phenomenal benevolent gesture for yourselves, for your family. And I just thought I'd say today that, so many people have asked me over the years, do you really enjoy what you do? Do you really, how can you? And you know what? I love what I do because wills and bequests are no longer this depressing and taboo subject. It's part of life. Every sort of mature adult has a discussion or a decision to make in this regard. And more importantly, I learn so much from all of you. I learn about different life journeys and cultures and experiences, some good jokes. And I just find more mature people, or older people, for want of a better word, are more invested in discussions. They're not distracted with technology and the latest TikTok craze. So yes, I find incredible meaning in what I do. I love what JNF stands for as an organization. And most importantly, I love Israel and I want Israel to flourish. So I just thought I'd put that in as a little thing. So on to our guest speaker of today, whom we heard from last and initially in February, face-to-face in February 2020. So I would like to once again just give you a little bit of an intro onto our guest speaker, Mike Zervos, and we're very intrigued to hear, how things have evolved, especially, that we've all been in lockdown. So Mike Zervos is the CEO of Courage to Care, which is an initiative of the B'nai B'rith. Courage to Care provides educational programs, warning of the dangers of racism, discrimination, and bullying and prejudice. To date, over 140,000 students across Victoria have experienced the exhibitions and incursions and learned to be upstanders and not bystanders. I think that's really powerful, upstanders and not bystanders. Recently, Victoria Police have decided to undertake training, much of their teachings of Courage to Care from the atrocities of the Holocaust and how to prevent this from ever occurring again. So I'm sure Mike will tell us also how that's going with the Vic Police. They've been very busy with other things, but hopefully that's part of their agenda. Before joining Courage to Care, Mike spent 16 years in leadership roles at Make-A-Wish Foundation, Alana and Madeline Foundation, and at Guide Dogs Victoria. Mike was pivotal in the growth and reach in the Alana and Madeline Foundation's programs in schools. He's a qualified CPA and has had an extensive corporate career, including senior roles at Cadbury and Repco in Australia, Kenya, and Los Angeles. And if not for Zoom, Mike had promised us again that he was bringing us all free chocolates. I would love that. Determined to put into use the best of both worlds, corporate and non-for-profit, his focus has been on strategic direction, raising the profile of the organization and impacting on Victorians with Courage to Care's important educational message. He's also a distinguished runner and has recently completed his 18th Melbourne Marathon. So he's a superman. Mike, I will now hand over to you.
Well, thanks, Jackie, for that. And I must say, having an introduction that ends with that I'm a superman puts me under a whole lot of pressure, doesn't it? But I share something with you, Jackie, and that I love what I do and the like. So I'm delighted to be back with you today. I can give you some assurances that I haven't got my Ugg boots on. I actually do have a suit on, which is a rare treat, and the like. So the intention today is to share some things with you. But I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land upon which we meet, the Bunurong people of the Kulin Nation, and pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. At Courage to Care, we like to do that acknowledgement. We also like to stop and reflect on what that means for us as individuals. And we're going to be talking about education today. And what I'm realising, having been born and bred in Australia and having gone through the whole education system, I know very little about the Aboriginal culture, which claims to be the oldest continuous living culture on the planet. So I'm pledging to better educate myself about the Indigenous people in our community and the like. And we all, as I said, we like to reflect on that. Today, we're all probably sick of Zoom, and I'm delighted to say that Jackie will get back to face-to-face. So rather than just me talk at you like this for half an hour or so, I'm going to try and mix it up a little bit with a little bit of talking, some slides, and with Tammy's help, some videos. So bear with us if we muck it up. We're going to try our best to get it all organised. And as Jackie said, it was February 2020. I'd just returned from Israel, where I'd never been before, and hosted in the JNF and the like, and it was the most amazing experience. But none of us could have predicted what the next year and a half would look like when we all gathered together, and I shared some of my own personal journey and my own personal story and an update on Courage to Care. And I'd just like to thank JNF for the opportunity to share about Courage to Care and congratulate you on the work that you do. It's amazing, and I'd like to acknowledge the people who've helped for today. I'd also like to acknowledge the Courage to Care volunteers and our chairman, Dr. Tony Walden, is with us today. And I haven't had a chance to look across in these little squares that are faces, but I'm sure there's other familiar faces and the like. So, as I said, I'm going to share a little bit about who I am, just to remind you about who Mike Zervos is. I'll update you and remind you about Courage to Care. I know you've all heard of it, but making sure you appreciate who we are and where we fit in. I'm going to talk about how we coped with the last, or let me call it, lockdown period of time. Certainly share about what our plans are for the future. The future's looking a lot brighter. And then we can have some final thoughts and some questions and share it. I'll try and keep it as conversational as possible, but I do have some slides. As Jackie said, a little bit about me. I've had a corporate career for 20 years, and then I'm now in my 20th year in working in leadership roles in the not-for-profit sector. And I really have loved my time at the Make-A-Wish Foundation. I particularly enjoyed my time at the Alana Madeline Foundation because it was about education and getting into schools with cyber safety and wellbeing programs, and spending some time at Guide Dogs was brilliant as well. I've also been the vice president of the Kazi Club. And none of you will know what the Kazi Club is. It's actually a less tongue twister way of saying Gusta Lourdes, which is the island of my heritage, which I'll share a little bit about. And I was the director of the Brighton Christian Church. And my most proud career statement is I'm the inaugural CEO of Courage to Care, having been in the role for just over 3 years. And I think I was a bit of an experiment for all of us. And if you asked me 3 years ago, I had no idea what Yad Vashem was. I had no idea what B'nai B'rith was. I didn't even know how to say it. I'd never heard of Courage to Care. I'd never heard of JNF. And I certainly didn't know where the Negev was or didn't know much about Israel. So if you look at Mike Zervos 3 years on, I feel right at home. I think I can schlep with the best of them. I'm doing my best, but I was taught very early on to schlep. So any ego I had went out the window pretty quickly. So I think I'm pretty good at that. With my Greek heritage, I've learned one thing very, very important. If we run a function, we must have food. And we must not only have food, we must, if we've got a number of people, we must cater for at least double the number of people. So that really resonates with me with my Greek heritage. I certainly do that, and I certainly be honour that. So if there's got to be food left over in everything we do, that's part of our mission statement, I'm sure, which you'll relate to as well. But in all seriousness, I'm very proud of the progress that Courage to Care has made, particularly in an environment where none of us could have predicted the last 18 months. I'm just going to share some slides with you now, and then we'll come back and chat after a video. So just bear with me. I'm going to share screen, and I should be able to find a presentation. Let me see if I can find the presentation. See if it's that right one. Bear with me. I'm hoping you can all see that. Yeah, hopefully you can all see that. Hopefully I've got the right one. We're going to talk about education and creating awareness. I mean, that statement really resonates with me. I'm going to turn off the sound if I can do that. Just bear with me a second. Stop subtitles. So hopefully now you can see that screen. I'm hoping you can see all that, and it is an island. It is a map of Greece, and over on the right-hand side, if it's not covered by our faces, you'll see a little circle with Gastiludas in it. That's the island of my heritage, and you can see how far away it is from Athens, and you can see how close it is to the Turkish coast. Well, because of where it is, my maternal grandfather, Michael Mangos, arrived in Australia in 1909. That's how long my Greek heritage goes back, and how my Aussie heritage goes. So the Mangos family was here in 1909, and my father came out pre-war as a 15-year-old from that little island. And you can see how close it is to the Turkish coast. So I'm a proud Tassie, and there's lots of us out here. I know there's Melbourne is a strong Greek community, but we predate a lot of that post-war migration. This is a newspaper article from Kalgoorlie in 1915, raid on Greek shops. And I show it because my grandfather, Michael Mangos, had a shop in Kalgoorlie, but the drunken soldiers destroyed the shop, and he had to leave Kalgoorlie in the West in 1915 because of the racism against him and his fellow Greeks and the like. In fact, Tony Walden pointed out to me, if anyone's read any of Arnold Zabel's books, that The Sea of Many Returns actually quotes from the riots in Kalgoorlie in 1915. So my own family had that in our background. The other side of my family, that's an image of my father outside the cafe that we had. We called it an oyster bar to make ourselves sound more special, but it was really a cafe and fish and chip shop. That's in Bridge Road, Richmond. But the reason I'm showing that to you is because if you can read the top right-hand side, it says the proprietors of the establishment are naturalised British subjects, formerly of Greek nationality. Now, that had to be emblazoned across the window because the window kept getting smashed because we're foreigners. So my own family has had that in our background. We anglicised our names. I should be a McCully, but I'm a Mike or a Michael. And what we did to have ourselves fit in was being part of Richmond. This image is, and it's quite light, but it reads 1st of August 1935. That's the Richmond Football Club going on its annual trip to Tasmania. And why I'm showing you that is to fit in and to be part of the community. Our shop, and my uncle is in the middle of that photo, we were the sponsors of the Richmond Football Club. So times have moved on quite a bit, but that's my love affair with the Richmond Football Club, goes back, my family's in 1935. So if you'd like me to do a JNF talk about Richmond Football Club, we need to allow a couple of hours because they have a clear bias in that. But it's the way, in all seriousness, the way that we tried to fit in. That's be sponsors of a local community group and fit in. I mean, certainly diversity wasn't a big deal in those days, but it's a shot from the 1930s about the family and connectedness with the community. But linking myself and my trip to Israel, it was January 2020, I went to Israel and supported by JNF, which was wonderful. And of course, at Yad Vashem, I went to look at the righteous who were recognised. And it was Les Korsman, who you know well, who checked me out a little bit in the Zervos name, and we found Spiro Zervos as a righteous. Now, Spiro on the island of Corfu actually hid and supported a Jewish family. That family gave him their jewellery so he could use that to buy them foods. At the end of the war, when it was safe for them to come out, he returned that jewellery to them. And Spiro Zervos is quite rightly recognised as a righteous. Now, being a good Greek, I claim him as a cousin. Now, I don't know, well, I can't prove that, but anyone with a Zervos surname is a righteous. But in all seriousness, I've got real pride in being able to link my own surname with Yad Vashem and that amazing experience that I had back in January 2020. And so I've told you a bit about myself and my background because it links in with me and the education my family wanted me to have and my role at Courage to Care. I also want to share with you, sorry, these images are a bit fuzzy, but that's me with, Jessica from the Jewish Museum, Jane from the Holocaust Centre, Itzik from UJEB. Why I've got that slide there is to show that we get together a lot and we interact a lot. We firmly believe that we need to interact to share from each other, learn from each other, not compete with each other. So it's very important. So when we can, we get together to just talk about what our respective organisations are doing and how we can learn from each other. We don't want to duplicate what anyone else is doing. We want to support each other. In a similar vein, that's an image with the Minister for Education, Jane, and the CEO of Bedouin from Gandel Foundation on the left, and the Minister for Education proudly wearing an upstander wristband that I have on. And that's because Courage to Care proudly had a seat at the table when Holocaust education was made compulsory. But again, the most important part is that we work with the other organisations who are in education, so we complement and support each other, not compete with each other. Again, that's me with a medal, and I'm using myself as an example, although our chair, Dr. Tony Weldon, should take the credit, because we were highly commended in the education category for innovation and impact, the Umstander programs at the 2020 Multicultural Commission Awards. And I'm sharing that to say that what we do has activity, but it also has impact. You know, we're proudly supported by Gandel Foundation. If you have read today's Jewish News, you'll see that there's an article that Gandel Foundation has reconfirmed their partnership with Courage to Care for the next 3 years, and that's to the tune of over $200,000. And we've proudly got those supporters, and we physically couldn't do what we do without the support of the community. There's no doubt about that, because we offer our programs to schools at no cost. For those like me who want to make sure we have impact, we have activity, but the Department of Education had an independent evaluation done, and that's asking the teachers, does the Courage to Care program actually have impact? And their statement was, Courage to Care program is effective, impactful, and unique to other Department of Education and Training educational programs. So it's important to not only have activity, but actually know you're making a difference. And that meant a lot to us, because it meant that we were having an impact in terms of education on the teachers and the students that we were reaching. And the reason I show that image, it's actually taken at Hawthorn West Primary School when we could go into the programs face-to-face, which will be returning to ASAP. And you'll probably recognise all those faces: Michael Taft, Jules Deutsch, Sabrina Chapman, Lani Breyer, and Anna and Helen. Why I'm showing you that is, you recall that Hawthorn West Primary School had some incidents, some anti-Semitic incidents take place in their school. And they were investigated. And what Courage to Care's position was, after dealing with the department, we, in partnership with the school, and that's the lady with the short hair with the glasses, is actually a principal of that school, Courage to Care now goes into that school and educates the students. So that's a really profound and really important understanding of where Courage to Care fits in. We go in and face-to-face, we're doing it remotely while we're doing now, but our prime activity, our prime effort is face-to-face in schools with students. So that is profound, and that's a prime example, a school that had incidents and wanted to do something about it. So we now have an ongoing relationship with that school. So we'll continue to educate the students and hopefully prevent incidents in the future. So to me, that's super important. Just as a bit of a reminder about Courage to Care, I'll just ask Tammy to share. It's a video that we use to promote our organisation and volunteering, but it really goes for about 2 or 3 minutes. It really just sums up. It really sums up who Courage to Care is. It hopefully brings it up together. And after that, I'll come back and have a bit of a chat with you. So Tammy, if you don't mind showing that, I'll stop sharing. Pass it over to you.
Hi, my name's Jacob and I'm a Courage to Care volunteer.
I'm Lani and I'm a Courage to Care volunteer.
My name is Sarah and I am a Holocaust survivor. I was 13 when the war started. From the age of 16, I was on my own, on the run, working in Germany as a Polish Christian girl. I was twice caught by the Gestapo. I spent a month in jail in Germany, then sent to an extermination camp Majdanek. On the way in Leipzig, I managed to escape. Only one person saved my life by letting me stay at her place overnight. Ordinary people helped thousands of human beings to survive, and they were real heroes just by being upstanders.
Courage to Care is a not-for-profit, and we are a travelling education program that transforms bystander behaviour. We do this by using the Holocaust and other genocides as examples of racism, discrimination, prejudice and bullying. What Courage to Care wants to do is empower everybody to actually take positive action, to be an upstander, not a bystander.
As a Courage to Care volunteer, I inspire others to make a positive difference through education and allow them to inspire others in the community to do the same thing. At a time where hate speech is rife, Courage to Care inspires others to stand up for what they believe is right and stand up for those that are marginalised.
By visiting schools across Victoria and spreading the message to a younger generation, we're giving the opportunity for young individuals to break down barriers.
Anyone can be a Courage to Care volunteer, no matter the race, religion, age or type of person you are, as long as you can stand up for what you think is right.
Volunteering for Courage to Care is really good for the soul. It makes you feel so good to be able to educate the younger generation about the world around us.
Help change lives and help empower Australians to be upstanders, not bystanders.
Become a Courage to Care volunteer like me today.
Become a Courage to Care volunteer like me today.
Please become Courage to Care volunteer like me to enable us to continue our work by making people aware what ignorance can bring. We are all human beings belonging to one human race.
Thanks, Tammy. Now, that was to clearly give you an idea about Courage to Care, but I encourage you as you think about what 2022 looks for you. In that video, it said that volunteering is good for the soul. I'm sure that Jackie would like to talk to you if you want to volunteer with JNF, and volunteering is an important part of our collective community. It's vital to us, but it's also vital for JNF. So I love that video, and I think it's a nice summary, and I hope that sort of gives you a sense of just a reminder of who we are. I just want to talk to you about during lockdown. What a time that was for all of us. And I'll talk to you about organisationally how we reacted, coped. Looking back, I think one of the most challenging things was we just didn't know how long it was going to go for or what it was going to be. If someone had said you're going to be out of action for 18 months or a year or whatever, we might have made plans, but it was stop, start, stop, start. And the immediate concern we had was for each other, our Holocaust survivors and our volunteers. And I must say, when we contacted our survivors to make sure they were okay, I was inspired by talking to them, because a number of them said to me that they felt safe, they were in a warm environment, they had food and the like. And in fact, their resilience was an inspiration to us all. But organisationally, it was quite challenging, because all of a sudden we couldn't use our office, and it just, we'll just work from home. But all the bits and pieces, the technology elements of that, how do we work? How do we get access to it? How do we cope? Where do we all work on the kitchen bench at home? How do our families react? It was such an emotive time for us all, and as individuals, let alone us as an organisation. And so we had to try and cope as best we could. We then had to reach out, and I acknowledge all our volunteers and our staff in particular, because we reached out to all our volunteers to try and keep everybody informed. We met this thing called Zoom, which we've all now embraced and got thoroughly sick of, I'm sure, but it's a lovely tool. The positive in Zoom meant that we could interact with people, for example, our counterparts in New South Wales, because I'm representing Victoria today. So we were able to communicate more with our colleagues and friends in New South Wales. But we had to deal school by school to cancel. Well, we didn't like the word cancel, we postponed. We kept postponing programs. We can't come now, but we'll come later on. Our program coordinator, Karen, didn't like the cancel word, so I think we've actually postponed and rebooked particular schools 4 or 5 times. Crazy. Each time it's specifically dealing with the school and the associated volunteers and the like. We had to talk to all our stakeholders, and by that I mean the people who are generous in the support, and let them know what's happening and what our plans are. And a legitimate question that could have been asked was, well, if you're not able to go into schools, well, why should we give you money? Why are we funding you for? But the reality is, to keep an organisation going, to keep it ready, and we had to have ready to be bounced back for when we came out of this situation. And even the things I've talked about, communicating with the schools, communicating with our volunteers, keeping the work going. There's been an enormous amount going on. And one of the things we noticed is that we're an education organisation, but particularly early on, there was a large increase in racism, particularly against Asians, because blaming them for this virus and the like. And our own ambassador, Alpha Cheng, actually did a talk on that very subject for us about the impact. So racism did not go away. Racism was heightened during this period of time. And the positives during this period of time is we did develop our remote learning. So we do have an offering now that we can do things remotely. Our strong preference is to do it face-to-face. You know, we've actually got volunteers who we physically haven't met in person yet who've joined up during this period of time. We learnt a lot about ourselves. We do have a program for not only secondary year program age students, but now younger students as well. And Jackie referenced that we were doing some work with Victoria Police. So that was great because that's adults. We've also, in this last 18 months, developed a program and run it for teachers who are involved with respectful relationships in schools. So we have run upstander training for the teachers in the school. And the eloquence of that is the teachers are now learning to be upstanders, and then we'll be able to reach their students. So it's a really holistic approach. We've even been doing programs for a fee, which we're now doing to help pay our bills. We run sessions with Rotary about diversity and inclusion. So it's an area we're doing a lot more in. So even though there was a lot of challenges, we're able to do quite a bit during this period of time. And we have learned a lot about ourselves. And I'm just going to share with you a few slides now. Just if I can find it, there we go. Hopefully that shares. Let me just move on. Well, that's not letting me move. Just bear with me. We ran a whole lot of Zoom sessions. It won't surprise you that we did that. It was the way that we could keep each other informed. There's some familiar faces there that we ran a session just honouring the service of particularly, there's Frank, Peter and Les. Alpha is an ambassador of ours, and he actually did a presentation about education, about the fact that the racism that was directed at Asians in our community, and which was crazy stuff. We ran boot camps, just educating ourselves. How do you react? What do you say? We ran a whole series of, just giving a flavour of the Zooms during all that period of time. We talked about marathons before. Did anybody else make any crazy decisions during lockdown? Well, we couldn't run, Courage to Care could not run our face-to-face fundraising events. We had a bridge event we had to cancel. We often have an event at Raheen where we try and generate funds. So our funding was impacted. So in a weaker moment, and to get rid of the COVID kilos, not that anyone else has got any COVID kilos, I agreed to run a marathon in October. So it was dubbed the Marathon Mike. So by myself, a few Sundays ago, I ran a 42-kilometre event, and the community supported us to the tune of $11,000 raised. So I think I was asked if I'd do one for JNF, but I think I'll charge you by the blister, so it might be too expensive for you. But that's an image of my wife and I, about 26 kilometres. Ros joined me for part of it. I love that sign. We get locked down, but we get up again. We get locked down, but we get up again. And I think that's true of all of us. We do get locked down, but we are getting up again. So after lockdown, hopefully the worst is behind us. Our focus is planning and returning to face-to-face program delivery, what we do well into schools in 2022. Sadly, the need for Courage to Care upstander programs in our education is more than ever. I mean, I could fill a whole presentation with just images about racism, inappropriate words, inappropriate behaviours, what we saw happen in our own communities. So there's lots for us to do in schools. In fact, the demand from the schools is higher than ever for the programs of Courage to Care. So any doubt we had about schools wanting us to visit, we've got more demand than we could fill. In 2022, after lockdown, we will return, and we're committed to regional Victoria. We'll be setting up our exhibition in Echuca and Frankston, which was postponed from this year. We want to reach regional Victoria. We'll be going to Mildura, we'll be going to Geelong for extended visits. Our aim, with the support of our volunteers and the community, is to reach 10,150 Victorian students next year with our educational programs. And I've got many schools there. I'll read out some of the names of the schools we plan to go to. And importantly, we're doing more in the adult space, and we're actively looking for organisations for a fee who would like us to provide training. We now have that as a fee-for-service offering to them. A reminder, we run a film. Often we are the first time a student has heard about the Holocaust. We run a film for historical context. Our survivor speakers speak about the fact that they're alive today because someone had the courage to care about the behaviour. And most importantly, in our facilitation, we challenge the students and the adults to think about their own behaviour. Why are we bystanders? Why don't we take action? We talk about if you're a bystander, who are you really supporting? You're really supporting the perpetrator. We encourage people to be an upstander. But we recognise that there are personal factors that stop us. Past experience, our belief, our relationships. I don't want to get bashed up, things like that. But we challenge people to think about what they can do to be an upstander. And we leave that with students and we leave that with adults because it's applicable to all of us. Next year, believe it or not, B'nai B'rith Courage to Care turns 30. And we plan to celebrate our 30th anniversary. We've already booked the ARC between 23rd of May and 3rd of June. We're going to be running a whole series of activities and have our Metropolitan exhibition there. You're all cordially invited to come and have a look out at our at what we do in schools. You'll see it firsthand. Come and join us. And we're looking for organisations to help sponsor that and support us. But we plan to celebrate our 30th birthday in style next year in May, June. In summary, Courage to Care is needed more than ever. What we've seen during the lockdowns is we've seen the best of behaviour, but we've seen the worst of behaviour. The level of racism in our community has not gone away, it's increased. So we see ourselves as doing something about it face to face. We strongly believe that education is the answer. If we educate ourselves and challenge each other about our behaviour, about the vital nature of education, that we can nip things in the bud. Our strong message is being a bystander is not neutral. Being a bystander means you are supporting the perpetrator, doing nothing for the victim. And I've got there that we need more volunteers, as a lot of organisations do. The reason for that is because essentially we are a volunteer organisation. All our programs are delivered by volunteers. And we need continued funding support because we offer our programs at no cost to schools. So it's an exciting time ahead, but it's a challenging time ahead because there's a real issue that we need to contribute to in society. I do want to share with you, I'm just going to roll this off the tongue a bit and then we'll just show a video to finish up on. To give you an idea, already booked in the first few months of 2022, Courage to Care will have our beautiful volunteers visit schools face-to-face with students with the sort of things we've been talking about, challenge them. We'll be going to Caulfield Primary School, we'll be going to Kingsley Park Primary, Mount Lilydale Mercy College, Morty Alex Secondary College, Camberwell Grammar, Mount Lilydale Mercy, Beaumaris Primary, Haileybury, all their campuses. We're going to St Peter's College, Surfside Primary School. We're going to Brighton Secondary College 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times. So all the students from year 7 upwards at Brighton Secondary College, and if you recall, that's a school that had anti-Semitic incidents, will actually have face-to-face experience with the Courage to Care program. And the reason I'm labouring the point is that when things happen in our community, I, like others, will write a letter to an editor, I'll write an opinion piece, I'll do talks. But in many ways, we're preaching to the converted because we believe in what we believe in, we know that. But why I'm so energised and excited about Courage to Care, that list of schools I just read out, and that's just part of term 1, we will be face to face with those young Victorians, challenging their thinking, being the first time they're educated about the Holocaust and the learnings of the Holocaust, and having them actually be educated about the dangers of those sorts of things. So that's enough from me, except that quote, which I firmly believe in. The only thing necessary for triumph of evil is for good people to do nothing. And I'll just invite you if there's any comments or questions you like. But just before we do, I'd just like to share a video that was put together by Max. Max is a prime example of the Courage to Care family. He's actually Dr. Tony Weldon and Vivian's grandson. He's a very talented young man who put this video together, and we share this with people who have seen our program. So Tammy, if you don't mind sharing this, and after that, Jackie, it's back to you. And if anyone's got any questions, happy to take them.
What can you recall from the Courage to Care Upstander workshop in which you participated? Perhaps it was the powerful video explaining the Nazi ideology of racism and discrimination which led to the tragedy of the Holocaust and millions of innocent lives lost. Was it one of the heartbreaking personal testimonies of survival through the Holocaust, thanks in no small part to the bravery of others who chose to act instead of standing by and doing nothing? Did you reflect on the ideas that racism and discrimination still exist in our society today, even though Australia is a great distance in time and location from the horrors of the Holocaust? Whilst an extreme example that illustrates the worst of mankind, the Holocaust was driven by characters and themes that still exist in our modern world. Do you remember learning about perpetrators, or those who commit harmful, illegal, or immoral acts? We talked about bystanders, those who witness these harmful acts and choose to do nothing to prevent such harm from occurring. We also looked at the powerful ways that a bystander allows the perpetrator to feel supported, while making a victim feel alone. Together we concluded that choosing to remain a bystander is not a choice to be neutral, but a choice to allow harm to happen. You might also recall we discussed upstanders, who choose to act safely and help others instead of watching on quietly, while also showing bystanders that they can choose to make a difference. The upstanders during the Holocaust had the courage to care. They made the choice to stand up rather than simply standing by, to not allow bad things to happen to innocent people. These are choices we all face today as we bear witness to discrimination and hatred in our own communities and in our wider society, whether this be through stereotypical ideas, hurtful language, or acts of physical violence. Hopefully, you've reflected further on ways in which you can take action and make choices when the right moment presents, to stand up rather than standing by.
Thank you
Thanks,
so
Kate.
much.
Back to you, Jackie.
Amazing. Before I open to questions, I've actually got two, well, they're quick ones. You can just, I've jumped in. Just a question regarding, well, to me, is there any element of the education that would be towards the parents? Because I know it's all at schools, but often this sort of discrimination, anti-Semitism, hatred actually comes from the home. The kids are picking it up from home, even if I've come across that myself, where people hadn't even met a Jewish person or a, and also coming from South Africa, where there was so much racism. Not that I learned that from my house, but I know that often emanates from the parents. So is there an element of your educational program whereby the parents are called in as well, so that, that's a place to also? And my second question was, utilizing Holocaust survivors is a fantastic thing, but the reality is that within 5 to 10 years, there will be no longer any Holocaust survivors. And is there anything in place to have all that on record so that their message is still prevalent?
Well, thanks for that. Well, I'll answer the second question first. Yes, we do have recordings of our Holocaust survivors. What we're also doing is we actually have custodian speakers. What we're inviting is members of the family to actually continue to share the story of our Holocaust survivors. And we want to make it as intimate and as personal and as a family story as possible. So we're encouraging, we've had a number of people who have come forward who are doing that. And it's a lovely way for them to be able to continue to, to pay tribute to that family member and honour that family, their memory. And it is profound. So that does give us that longevity that you're saying. But we do have, so we'd much prefer, we do have recordings of our Holocaust survivors, which is quite beautiful. But if we can, we'll try and have a first-person experience story. The second one about the parents, yeah, we'd love to. I mean, it's a matter of doing what we do as well as possible. Our adult offering is at the moment into workplaces, into schools. It comes back to resources. We would love to do that for parents and will eventually, and depends on the holistic approach. But if I refer to my professional background in this sector to try and have the biggest impact it can have on a society, what I learned when I was with the Alana and Madeline Foundation, and when we're developing the eSmart programs and the cyber safety programs and the like, and what I was attracted to with Courage to Care, is pragmatically, students are a captive audience. We can reach a young mind and we can influence a young mind. And it's no accident that we have a program that's pitched at the sort of year 7, year 8 students as they start to form their values. But importantly, what we've now developed is our younger program, our middle years program. So now what Courage to Care within our existing resources, we can help frame and educate and shape the thinking of a grade 5 or grade 6 are challenging in this with age appropriate images and language. We can then also reinforce that message when that student is in secondary school. We've also taken 6 of the stories that from the anthologies that Julie Meadows put together and created teacher upstander packs to reinforce that messaging. We're also offering education to the teachers through for a fee for service through the respectful relationships areas of the education department. And as you referred, we're also offering education to people like the police and Rotary and things like that. So we're taking a holistic approach. It comes back to resourcing. It comes back to where you can get the biggest impact, and those are the areas we're focused on. I have no doubt that Courage to Care in the future will have a program specifically for parents. The cynic in me also realised that when we did this at Alana Madeline, when we held cyber safety and anti-bullying lectures and things early on for the parents, often it was the parents who were already attuned to this topic that would turn up. So you weren't reaching as far widely. So at the moment, our focus is on school-age students, the workplace and teachers, but that then has a ripple effect. And it's no surprise that the students will go home with a wristband on. It's no surprise the students will go home with a sticker, because hopefully what the parent will say is, what's that upstander word mean? So it's our sneaky way, Jackie, of trying to influence the parents as well. Thanks for the question.
Excellent. Sorry, just had to let the cat wants to come in here. Sorry. The virtues of working from home. Any other questions? Just you can unmute yourself, or you can just put up your hand. I'm just going to scroll.
There is a question from Tammy Olsher.
Yes, Tammy.
Do you go to universities?
Another good question, and again, it comes back to resourcing. We can't be all things to all people, so we'd love to, but what we're doing at the moment is focusing on doing what we do well, because I mentioned we're going to reach 10,150 students next year. There's a lot more students we can reach, so we can't spread ourselves too thin. We'd like to, it's aspirational, and it all comes back to resourcing. So at the moment, we're focused on school-age students, teachers and workplaces. We could go into them as an education institution and talk to them as we do with teachers about the upstander concept, but we just haven't got the resources to go any wider at this stage. But thanks for the question.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
I'm just delighted with what you're doing. I think it's too wonderful.
I think Phil Lerner has a question.
Yeah. Mike, I'm really interested to know about your history, family history, and why your family member went to Kalgoorlie and not to Perth.
That's a very good question. I think like a lot of our families, they probably followed other members of the family and where the opportunities were. I don't actually know exactly why they went up to Kalgoorlie first, but I presume that somebody took a trip up there and it was just where they saw opportunity. And at that stage, they were young men who were mobile, so they were able to move around a bit. I know my grandfather, who I'm named after, ended up in the cane fields up north. But it sounds stereotyped that most of them then came back and settled in the bigger cities and opened food businesses or fruit businesses. So, yeah. But, you know, if that hadn't happened, I may very well have been, who knows what our family history would have been.
Study Unit 308.
Yes.
So, right, go into it.
Yeah.
There's a question from Keith and Deirdre.
Oh, actually, yeah, hi. I was just wondering, when you're speaking to the people, do you also bring up about the Indigenous people as well as you said, the Asians before, as well as the Jewish people?
Actually, thank you for that. It's remiss of me not to have mentioned William Cooper, because one of the important...
Yeah, because he was...
yeah, absolutely. And thank you for that. In fact, it was remiss of me. I will amend my presentation for the future, because we're very proud to have Uncle Boydie as our patron, William Cooper's grandson. In fact,
Yes.
I was very proud that, well, it was only last week or so that I was on a telephone call for his 93rd birthday. We talk a lot about William Cooper and the fact of him as a prime example of being an upstander. So we have a strong connection with the Cooper family for Uncle Boydie and the next generations. And we're also joining in on the 5th of December as part of, through JCCV and B'nai B'rith, as part of support for the rural restraitment. So we do a lot in that area, particularly referencing William Cooper, and that has led us into a number of other relationships with other organisations. So thank you for that. That was remiss of me of not referencing that.
Yeah, most important.
Yeah,
Okay,
indeed,
thanks.
thank you.
Yeah, good. I always like hearing you.
Maybe one more question, and then anyone else? One more. Barbara Kessel. I see a little hand, but I'm not sure what that means. Barbara, you can unmute yourself.
Unmute, yes. Can you hear me now?
We can hear you, we can't see you.
Okay, that's fine. Just a comment. I watched Incarceration Nation, a documentary about the Indigenous people from the first landing here. It was absolutely fascinating. And I was actually quite ashamed, because ashamed of white people and what they've done to people of color. I lived in South Africa during apartheid, and how the Indigenous people here were actually treated, I think, worse than the Black people in South Africa. So I think if for anyone to look at racism, anyone who's interested in this Encourage to Care should actually watch this program. It's a brilliant documentary, and it really highlighted the fate of the Indigenous people, and the incarceration rates are just incredible here. Thank you.
Thank you, Bella.
Thank you so much. I will now hand over to Jack, my lovely co-chair, and Bella's also here. She's the other co-chair of this great group. Jack will do the vote of thanks, and then I'll come back.
Okay, I think I'm unmuted.
You are.
Good. Mike, thank you so much for your great presentation. I've been very fortunate to hear you do a presentation previously, and you get better and better and better each time. It's very important, I think, for all of us to understand that that racism, bullying, anti-Semitism, and all the violence attached to that won't ever go away. And that to reduce the impact of this, we need to educate, and we need to understand that there are different races and different cultures and different people. The best place to start this, I think, as you pointed out, is with the kids. They're the ones with the minds that can understand these things a lot better than parents. So thank you again for your wonderful efforts in doing all this. When we finally learn, this is my personal comment, when we finally learn to live together in harmony, the world will be a much better place to live. So thank you for keep up the good work.
Thanks, Jack.
Thank you so much. So once again, thank you so much, Mike, for your time and your efforts and your resources and giving of your time today. We will be having one final event of the year. It's going to be on sorry, I'm just trying to get back to gallery view. 1 second, there we go. We're going to be having an event on, the invites will go out soon. It will be on the 9th of December. It will be a Thursday, and it may well be in the afternoon. We've got the most incredible concert pianists that we have managed to procure. So we literally end the year on a good note. Jackie joke. And we will be very, very, very excited to see you all in person. So please come along. We'll send that out soon. Mike, you're welcome to join, and that will be, ending off this weird year, but very good and inspiring year on a positive on a positive one. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Tammy. Thank you, Bella. Thank you, Jack. Thank you, Mike. And we'll see you soon.
All the best, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. That was terrific.
Pleasure.
Thanks a lot.
Can I see water?